Laid to Rest is a horror slasher film. Had trouble finding this one, but I found it at the video rental shop for $5 in the used bin, so it's been on my list for a while. This is about a woman who wakes up in a coffin in a funeral home. She's known as the girl in the credits, but I'll call her Princess because that's what they call her in the film. Princess basically wakes up in this funeral home with amnesia and an injury on the back of her head, and she's not sure what's going on. However, whenever she bumps into people to ask for help or anything, a man in a skull mask kills them. His gimmick is that he's got a skull mask, a big sharp blade, and a camera mounted on his shoulder. So he stalks Princess, and she's trying to find people. She bumps into a random man driving at night and stops at their house, and Chromeskull basically stalks her the whole movie and kills anyone that she comes into contact with. This is an example of a movie that's just almost there. You can tell the budget of this film was a bit higher than normal because it has really good gore kill scenes. Production values is fine, and there's actually a couple of actors in this movie that you actually can recognize. There's Lena Headey from Game of Thrones. She did this movie 2 years before that. There's Sean Whalen, he does a lot of TV, and there's also Lucas Till. I recognized him, so it's not like the movie didn't have the money for decent actors or good kills. It doesn't have a story. This movie is written and directed by Robert Hall. He's got a vision of this killer with a gimmick of filming his kills, but that's it. Half the movie is basically then people just running around scared, panicking, losing keys, cars being broken down, trying to find a new vehicle, walking, hitchhiking, walking around, being panicked, trying to contact the police, but just, the phone broke while I was holding it or some BS. So a lot of contrived stuff like that. There's no story, there's no character arcs, there's no interesting part of the film to differentiate this from the dozens of other slashers. This one was made in 2009, so it really doesn't differentiate itself from the pack or anything. The killer's gimmick doesn't do anything except for sometimes the camera will shift to the shoulder. Besides some good kills, the movie doesn't have much going on for it, so I give Laid to Rest a 3 out of 10. Chromeskull Laid to Rest 2 is the sequel to Laid to Rest. Now, I didn't quite enjoy Laid to Rest, so I kind of didn't want to watch the sequel. However, I just finished it and I was like, the second one's on Tubi for free with ads. It's a light watch at 90 minutes. Let's just do it. So the second film kind of picks up where the first film ends, and we sort of get some more world building. This movie is very different from the first film. The first one was kind of like a very cheap looking slasher movie without much ambition. This one is trying to go for something really wild and different, almost kind of like a Cabin in the Woods almost. There's this entire organization apparently, and Chromeskull is the boss. So he is recuperating after the events of the first film, and his assistant is going a little bit rogue, and they have a pretty solid horror icon in there, Danielle Harris. She was in a couple of the Hatchet movies, so she's just sort of there as a toady. It was kind of weird. And you still got the Thomas Dekker and the Princess from the first film. So the assistant's sort of doing stuff. He's kind of like the main focus of this movie. Chromeskull is basically just sort of recuperating, but they're sort of building up this mythology of Chromeskull having this whole organization. And it makes sense too, because if you're a mass killer with a mask and you film deaths, you'd be in the news, right? You'd be all over the place. The police would be all over it. So he's got this whole crew and organization of people who clean up after him, get rid of the bodies, hide things, cover it up, I guess. And that's not really explored that much. There's a couple of detectives in this movie. They're not very noticeable. They're kind of cannon fodder. And then we introduce a new character to be the final girl, and she's kind of just no development for her either. It's mostly focused on the sort of beef between Chromeskull and his assistant, who's sort of doing too much, and while Chromeskull is recovering, so the two of them come to odds. There's some interesting elements of this movie, and it's definitely super gory, but again, character development is shafted. There isn't much of a story besides this organization thing, which seems a little bit just like filler. So it's hitting its stride. This one's definitely more entertaining than the first film, but it's not by much. So I give Chromeskull Laid to Rest 2 a 5 out of 10.